Bonsoir mesdames et messieurs et bienvenue à notre show CHERECHER L'ARTISTE. Je suis Leslie Dalencour et nous allons passer un moment fantastique ce soir. J'ai un invité spécial, il fait l'architecture et le landscape comme on dit. The show today is going to be in English, so today I have a special guest for you and his name is Roberto Rovira from Puerto Rico, and he is a chairperson at FIU Landscape, Architectural, Environmental, and Urban Design, and it has a principal studio, the Roberto Rovira, in Miami. He's going to talk to us about himself and all the great things that he does. Ladies and gentlemen, without waiting, je vous présente, I present to you Roberto. Roberto, welcome to CHERECHER L'ARTISTE.
Thank you, Leslie. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm totally baffled by all the nice and beautiful things that you do. Mm-hmm. And I never knew that it involved design and all that. And on top of it all, you are a chairperson at FIU. That's so right. Please, could you tell my viewers who you are exactly?
Sure. So Roberto Rovira, and I've been at FIU a professor and chair of the program for many years. I started at FIU in 2005. I'm a landscape architect by profession, but also an artist. And as a landscape architect, it's a field that is quite a beautiful profession. And I don't think it could be more relevant today, given that, one, I mean, we're surrounded by such natural beauty, but truly it's about people. It's about people designing for people. We create spaces for public space, for communities, for cities, places that people want to be in. And it's both an art and a science, I guess you could say.
It is. And I see that you won a lot of beautiful decoration. How do you say awards?
Yes.
And that you have, and that all your design have been around the world and in a lot of magazines. So we're going to talk about all that.
Sure.
Tell me, how did you start? What got you interested in landscape, architectural landscape, and design? Were you just first an artist and you were drawing? Where you were growing up? What were you thinking?
Yeah, growing up in Puerto Rico, you know, as an island, I spent a fair amount of time outside. My grandfather had a farm, but I always had an interest in the arts and the humanities. Mm-hmm. I wrote, I drew, I did art from a very young age. But believe it or not, I actually began at least my education, university education, as an engineer. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I did. I did it for some time. I did it with a Navy scholarship, so I became an officer as soon as I graduated. And it wasn't until later on, through my travels, that I actually got to know what landscape architecture was about. So it's a field that really combines the, I guess, the technical side of things, how you make things work, how you're mindful of how things have to function, but it's also about a somewhat poetic understanding of how things are always connected. And the natural and the built environment, that's what we do. It's about planning, design, the management and stewardship of the environment. Mm-hmm. But it's also, again, about people and communities and building spaces that are creating better environments. So we use these natural world, but also bring that into architecture and making those relationships really complementary in the design.
And so when you're building for a community, for example, let's say, well, Miami being a little bit on the hot side, mm-hmm. I say a little bit, it's quite hot right now. So you choose some plants also. You're the one that chooses the plants. So did you have to study about how the plants grow? What do they need to be taken care of? Yeah. What is it going to entail? Does that come into the planting, the architecture of the whole thing, and the cost that is going to take to maintain this and the beauty of the project after you have presented it to the public, where it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, if you think of what architects do and how they have to have a series of technical drawings and a really good understanding of how structures work, landscape architects do the same thing. It's just that we do it in the outside, outside environment. So yes, definitely the plan palette is extremely important. And like you said, right now we're really valuing our shade and the canopy that trees provide. People want to naturally flock to these because this is how you handle a hot, humid environment like the one that we're in. But it's also about how you put things together, how you design the pattern on the ground, what we call the hardscape, so the paths, the infrastructure. And as landscape architects, we do things like roofscapes, the transportation network, we plan, we create master planning documents. These are all things that allow us to see things in the big picture, which I think is really an important part, and to not just think of things as discrete objects, but rather how everything's connected. So the relationship of people, public space, the natural environment, these things are all together in a landscape architect's planning and design.
And for example, certain trees, you can use tropical trees down here, down south. But if you go up to Washington, D.C., I saw that you have something in D.C. We'll talk about that too. I lived in the vicinities of D.C., Maryland and Virginia, the DMV, so it's all connected. But and I know D.C. very well. I've partied a lot there. And so, as you go up there, you don't see palm trees because it's cold. And you see, we have the cherry blossoms, that are dead in the winter and that flourish in February, and it's beautiful. I didn't see any cherry blossoms down here.
No, and actually that's a really important part of our field. You really have to design for where you're located. So I've had the fortune of designing in places in the Caribbean. In Aruba, I did a park project a few years ago. Before coming to Miami, we lived in California. That's a completely different environment.
Totally.
And then I studied in the Northeast. So every one of these places requires that you really have a certain humility about absorbing
their vegetation,
natural systems. You have to understand them before you can even consider yourself a landscape architect. Without that knowledge, your designs would be really flawed. So it's about trying to understand all these different places and then finding opportunities to design whatever it is that you're doing,
And do you think about the weather? For example, here we have the hurricanes, even though sometimes up north we have hurricanes that come from Florida and then go up. Do you think like if I plant this tree that the hurricane might affect it, or it's
very important, and I think that it's really fundamental to know how you can design things that work within that context. I mean, if you wanted, you could try and make plants work, in a completely new environment, and you basically have to put them on life support for them to thrive. A lot of maintenance, a lot of really intensity. But the more that you understand the site, then there's a whole host of a plant palette that has acclimated over thousands and millions of years to the context. So you want to understand that and use that in your work. And you also want to understand how people relate to these. It's not just like putting things out there in the abstract. It's, you design, and if you want people to spend time, you have, let's say, furnishings outside. You have water elements. You have how, when somebody exits a building, how do you relate to that? How do you make that work? If you're walking down the street, you could walk down a street with no shade, no trees, really harsh materials. But as a landscape architect, you try to think, okay, if people are going to spend time here, how do you make it so that, one, it isn't as oppressive? How do you provide shade? How do you provide comfortable places to sit? How do you make it so that you're connecting to, let's say, public transportation? All these things are really important. How do you keep, you know, people dry and comfortable? I mean, those are all fundamentals of what we do. I like to think of landscape architects as also having the opportunity to introduce art and poetry and basically allow for people to truly love their environment. Because you can make things work.
Yes.
You know, you can make them just put the things together and they won't flood, but it could also be a very boring space. In the work that I do and the work that we try to have our students do, we really want to think how you can make spaces that are transformative, that have something of value to add, that give you a somewhat of an artistic interpretation, at least in the work that I do through my office. We really try to do that. Again, the more that you understand the place, the more that you can add to it and contribute to this larger picture.
As you've been teaching for a long time, students, have you encountered students that had a different style of not only architecture but vegetation in their country, and they ask you, how can I make this work with this plant?
Yeah.
Or for example, I just came back from Canada and I heard that they're trying to find a way to make coconut trees grow in Canada. I know that we have probably just 1 minute, so we're going to take a break.
Yeah.
I want you to keep this answer in mind.
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little break and we'll be right back.
Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center delivers the most innovative treatments available, from leading-edge research and breakthrough clinical trials to life-changing therapies and superior outcomes. Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center is the only NCI-designated and nationally ranked cancer center in South Florida. And with 10 locations in the region, it's easy to find a specialist near you. Learn more at inpursuitofyourcure.com.
Family Expo retourné. Jouez en journée plaisir ak famille ak ressources qui pral pare ou pour retourner l'école. Li facile avec yon Uber voucher pour jusqu'à $15 chaque façon. Prochaine exposition, c'est samedi 29 juillet dans Miami-Dade College Cando Campus. Visitez thechildrenstrust.org/Family Expo pour plus de détails.
Are you ready to party? Live with the Haitian Nation. I like this.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're back with our guest Roberto Rovira.
Yes.
And it's so exciting. He's telling me about things that I'm so interested in. And my last question was, have you had students that had a different environment and that you were not familiar with, and they ask you how you could help them, because they're probably going to go back to their country, or they're probably going to be working in that type of environment. How do we do that?
Well, I think we're fortunate at FIU in the landscape architecture program. We have students from all over, a lot of them, in fact, from the Caribbean. And the ideas that they bring to the table and that diversity of experiences from their countries and their landscapes really contributes to all the work that we do. The work and the projects are intended to really be an opportunity to think as a designer. And so we strive to really create and graduate students who grasp design. What are the fundamentals? How do you properly understand the site? And once you have those basics down, then it doesn't matter where you go, you will be able to apply them. So some students go back to their countries, some move to different parts of the United States, And as long as they have that strong fundamental of how do you approach a site, how do you understand and do a proper analysis, then you start to really grasp the opportunities that you have, and then you can adapt to the individual palette. But I think that it's fortunate that we have a place like Miami that allows you to attract all these students. And we want students who are bright, who are inquisitive, who have a creative sort of spark. And then we can put them in projects that allow them to really thrive and celebrate those, their unique perspectives.
That must be fascinating.
Every year and every semester is different because all the projects are a product of the individual interpretation.
And do you, when you get your list of students, how many students do you have in the class? 20, 23?
Usually in the studios are about 15 students
15?
on average, yeah.
Do they give you their nationality and then where they came from, and so you kind of go make a quick research? Hey, this guy is from Alaska. Yes. I don't know what kind of blend was there.
I think at one point we tried to figure out, and I think there was only 1 or 2 countries in all of Latin America that we didn't have students that had gone through the program. So all over, they come from all over, and it's really one of the great rewards that I have as a teacher and as a program chair, is to see all these different perspectives. A lot of them, their families have moved to Miami. Miami is, and being in Miami for this field is, I like to say there's no better time, no better place to study landscape architecture and deal with the issues of the 21st century than here, because we live that. We live the heat, the storms, we have the cultural diversity that is enviable across the world. All these things happen in a place like Miami. And so to study landscape architecture here really gives you insights in being able to understand issues that are going to affect a great majority of the world's population, because we specialize in that tropical and subtropical band of the world. This is where most people live now in the world, and the projections are that it'll be true that 6 or 7 billion people out of the 10 will live in places like Miami in the future.
For sure. So, and how do you project the global warming is going to affect the way you and your students that are designing things are going to affect their creation, their creativity for the future to accommodate a population?
Well, I think that's one of the most important responsibilities that we have as educators, is to really understand the challenges that are ahead. Such as, like you said, climate change. But as designers and as landscape architects, it's exactly those kinds of constraints and challenges that are amazing opportunities, because how many careers will be built, students who graduate from our programs who will have to be designing in a place that you're going to have a need for public space, for places for people to be inspired, for people to be outside, because we don't want to be indoors all the time, right? So our students, I like to call and describe our field as future-proof. We're creating the kinds of thinkers that will allow us to deal with all these issues down the road. And to me, that's like the most inspiring part of my job.
Talking about your studio in Miami, you chose an area. What's the name of the area again?
The Redland.
The Redland. What's that? What's that?
So the Redland is an agricultural district just south of Miami. I like to. This is how I describe it. I said if the Keys and the Napa Valley had a baby, that would be the Redland Agricultural District. Because
so
there you have nurseries, fruit groves, clear water ponds. You have this completely...
Is it close to Homestead?
It's right in Homestead, it's just west of Homestead. From FIU, it's about 30 minutes on the turnpike. It's actually a great commute for me. But it's a wonderful place for me as an artist and as a landscape architect. Where I live, it's about 2.7 acres, and it's a place that lets me experiment, in the landscape, create things, allow things to grow, see what happens, make big sculptures, take them down, and really allow for this three-dimensional sketching, I like to call it, installations, things that you can kind of test out before you do them in different projects.
So you have a big land, a big...
Yeah, it's a 2.7 acre farm that was basically nothing but turf, nothing but grass was planted there. And since then, we planted hundreds of trees, fruit groves.
Do you have mamoncillos?
We do, yes, sir.
I just found Mamoncillos in the street of Miami today, and I stopped in the middle of traffic. I hope the police doesn't see me, and I bought one.
They're amazing.
And mangoes?
Mangoes, lychees,
Lychee.
loquats,
And avocados?
avocados, key lime, Valencia oranges.
Oh my gosh.
Olives.
I'm definitely coming to visit.
All these things. I mean, and what's really amazing about, well, South Florida and this part of the world where we live in the Redland in particular is, we have the abundance of water, we have land that has everything to offer. All you need is, you sometimes want to put the brakes on things because they grow so quickly. So it really is about managing that, which is, again, what a landscape architect does. Is thinking about the environment, thinking about how you create spaces for people to be and spend time in. We have friends and family who come over, and it's always an opportunity to take, you think, wow, that's like a big size area. But then you start to design it, you create outdoor rooms, you create focal points in the landscape, you create fruit groves. These are all things that start to give character to a place that may not have had much on it when you started.
Right. But so in your studio now that it's not your studio, your office, what is it?
It's both. I have, I like to think of the entire property as my studio because I build things all the time.
Right.
We have 3 boys. A couple of them are not there, but whenever they come on vacation, I still enlist them to help. But we're constantly doing things. But yes, I have an office. It's actually a 1930s rock stone house that was built from the stone when they built the canals in South Florida. Our neighbor in the back is the grandson of the gentleman who built it, and so we're fortunate to have this farmhouse. And I have the studio there, and this is where we do all our creative work, our meetings, and it's an opportunity to see the product of our creative effort and thinking, and to design it, and then go outside and actually test it out.
And you're going to also tell us how people can get to know you, can know more about you. I know that you have a web page.
Sure, yes, the website is simple. I mean, if you can spell my last name, it's just my name.
Rovira.
Right.
R-O-V-I-R-A.
Right, RobertoRovira.com. That's just my name.
RobertoRovira.com.
There you go. So you can learn there. And if you want to learn about the program at FIU, we're always looking for talented students who from all over who can come to us, and that's landscape.fiu.edu.
I wish I was younger because I would have come.
You would have made your mark, I'm sure.
Believe me. I would have had a trick that we would call boom boom. The boom boom trick. Do you imagine? Oh Lord.
There's still time.
So what for the younger generation that some people didn't know or wouldn't know, I wouldn't know that architecture and design and landscape could be mixed together like that. What advice would you give to a person that there is a future, because from the way you've been decorated all around, you're an all-around man, I know you're on a project with Jacek that you guys are doing something very important.
Jacek Kolaczynski, great friend and collaborator. We we were in Mexico City because one of our projects, our collaborations, was a public art project that we did. Was honored, and that's the other, I think, really amazing thing, is that in the work that I do in my studio gives me an opportunity to collaborate with other artists, and we did this public project. We worked with over 500 kids from one of the schools there, the YMCA volunteers, to put up these giant colorful umbrellas in a site that is right off of the turnpike. The kids live on one side of the turnpike, they go to school on the other, and they have to cross this very unfriendly bridge, let's say. So we couldn't change the bridge because it's FDOT property, but what we ended up doing was create these very colorful umbrellas on both sides. So it really changes the experience of that. So we opened that project some years ago, and we had the fortune of getting it recognized and working with the community to realize it.
That is so beautiful. I mean, you don't only design everything, you embellish, and this is so. Your projects, how do they come to you? You're just sitting like that. You see something is not working quite right, and you decide, I would like to change that.
Absolutely. I think that's the first sign that you are, I think, a good candidate for this field. If you are constantly looking outside and seeing things, oh, that could be a little bit better. Again, it's about being inquisitive, trying to innovate, being creative. And I think that you want to have constant opportunities to see how things are done. So if I were to say to somebody, one, yes, come to our program, come to FIU to see what we do. That's the first stop. We'll be able to share some of the work that our students do. But travel, go outside, look at public spaces. What do you like about them? What do you not like about them? And start to formulate your own understanding of why it is that some places really are memorable, and others you kind of tend to forget. Why is that? And I think if you have that spark in you, again, creativity, being inclined to sort of figure things out and have this desire to create spaces for community and for the betterment of the environment, this is the fit that makes a landscape architect.
That is phenomenal. Listen, I'm so sorry, but our show is coming to an end today. And Roberto, it was such a pleasure. Phenomenal person. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
I'm amazed, and I hope I get a chance to. We're definitely going to be sending you some pictures and some stuff so you can have an idea. And don't forget, it's Rovira, it's Roberto Rovira.com, so you can check that out.
Perfect. Leslie.
And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next Sunday at the same time, same place. I'm Leslie Dalencour. I love you. See you.
Are you ready to party? Live.